друзья, добрый день. В сфере ритейла в последние годы...
So as for retail, so far we have had quite tremendous changes recently, and players should stay on guard from a technological point of view in order not to lose market share and set the pace for the future. So what technology could help business to grow on a regular basis, and what could help business to be scaled up? We're going to discuss it with our speakers of the next session. We will be talking about retail technologies changing the markets. And here are our speakers: Artyom Semenykhin, CEO of PricewaterhouseCoopers; Greg Cnossen, Group of Sales, Marketing and Communication General Director, Global Consumer Sales at Intel; Sundar Narasimhan, President of Cyber Labs; and Nikolai Popovich, Head for Corporate Innovations, Vkusville. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much for your involvement, for the fact that you join us both online and offline. And now I can have this social distances, 1.5 meters. I would like to thank colleagues for their willingness to join us. And I would like to thank our guests from the United States, represent such big companies as Cyber Labs, Intel. So actually our today's session will be about retail, and well, I would like to remind you about those memories from childhood. Do you remember when we had maths and physics? We worked with that, and one of the things I would like to discuss is the practical side, just in those school books, what can be used and what tools we can use and how we can learn using those tools. What about representatives of large-scale retail? What kind of experience they could share with us? And we also need to talk about technological companies. On one hand, they help retail to develop. On the other hand, they also represent their own retail business. So now, if you really want to talk about this issue, I've been thinking about technologies, and I realized that end of, for example, 2010 or probably closer to 2020, well, we got used to this word right now, technologies. Technologies, they have an all-pervasive influence. This is something that's presence. This is something that could actually save the world, and technologies will become some kind of a competitive advantage for the business in general, and they will be used and will be there in all the industry. In the context of retail, we know about all those black swans came over in 2020, and it has a direct impact on stores. And for example, retail previously had been based on the physical presence of people in points of sales, and we understand that it was really impacted by the situation, even though that right now we can see very good signs of recovery. Why it happened? Because, yes, we attribute that to technologies. We switched to online sales, optimization of supply chain, and many other things, like, for example, VR technologies, I mean, virtual reality. Well, but of course, it allows a lot of competences and investments. And today, I would like to talk about this particular issue. Not long ago, we published I mean, well, as a consultancy company, we work with a lot of different companies. We used a lot of questionnaires, and retail in Russia and in the world in general has to respond to three questions. The first one, it should strike the right balance between offline and online from the point of view of sales. Question number two is about balance between quality and production cost. And question number three, I think that it has been mentioned several times today, we talk about CO2, so-called, I mean, carbon footprint. That also is one of important issues. So I would like to invite our speakers to share their points of view on this matter. And first, I would like to ask Greg Cnossen, Intel company, to tell us a bit more about Intel company. So Intel company is very famous for its technological success, for development of different processes, use of hardware, hardware, but also at the same time, this is one of the biggest supplier of different parts in non-food retail. So, for example, PC markets, etc. So, in this sense, I would like to ask quite a complicated question for you. So, in general, how did you adapt or adjust from the point of view of PC markets to all those COVID-related factors? And what about your technological status within the company? How did you use to overcome all those problems and to make it even to a higher level?
Yeah, Arjun, thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm Greg Cnossen. Just to reintroduce myself, I'm Greg Cnossen. I'm part of Intel's sales and marketing organization, and I'm our general manager for global consumer sales. At Intel, just to give a little bit of background, our main purpose is to deliver life-changing technologies to every person on the planet to enrich their lives. Our strategy is to deliver world leadership silicon to be able to achieve this purpose. And what our team does is we take this silicon, we work with our OEM partners, we work with our distribution channels and our retailers around the world to be able to give consumer PCs to consumers. And so you'd asked a couple pretty good questions for us in terms of impact of COVID on TAM, and then how do our partners adapt? The first thing, let me address the first part of the question, which is impact of COVID on PC TAM. Pre-pandemic, we had seen our PC TAM on consumers be about 120 million units. As the pandemic in 2020 started, we saw an initial surge in demand, and that surge was really driven from us work from home and learn from home factors that drove in. What we had seen as the pandemic has progressed is we've actually seen the PC TAM kind of maintain that 160 million unit TAM in the consumer space. And we've kind of seen that being driven by a couple of factors. I think the first factor is as PCs and technology has come into the home, we've seen the density increase within families. So instead of it being one PC per household, it's one PC per person. We've also seen this drive an additional refresh factor of PCs. We've also seen as the pandemic has gone on that people are actually buying more premium-based products. And this is where, this is really driven from people in the home gaming, people in the home using these PCs to be creation devices for themselves. Now, as we look out in time, we actually believe that we've kind of sustained a new level. And based upon even some of the supply chain challenges that we're running into today, we actually think there's more opportunity in the market that we haven't been able to capture. So we're pretty bullish on the future. We're also pretty bullish on how technology interacts with consumers. Now, the second part of this is how do we adapt to be able to get our technology to consumers through our consumer channels? And one of the things that we sat back, actually, this was pre-pandemic, we had sat back and looked at, and we had seen the trend of omni-channel happening in the environment. And we kind of created this 2025 vision for how can Intel be leadership in helping our partners get to an omni-channel environment. What the pandemic forced us to do was accelerate what we thought our 2025 vision was into 2020 and 2021. There's a couple of major trends and actions that we saw, and we put actions and we're pretty rapid in this. First, we had to do is look at our customers. We saw new retailers emerging. We saw marketplaces emerging. We saw online retailers emerging. What this forced us to do is we had traditionally looked at our business pretty regionally in retail. This forced us to take a much more global point of view in terms of how do we get to consumers. The second thing we really focused on was what we term internally as the buyer's journey. Consumers today are using online methods to be able to really capture information and learn. And we spent our time trying to get a consistent message out among multiple sources. It could be our website, a partner website, a retailer website, but we needed to make sure that we had consistency of message so that the buyer could easily find technology and know what was important to them. The third major change we had was around investments in store. in an omni-channel environment, the store is still a very critical component, but a couple things have changed. One is we really needed to invest in the education of the what we term as RSP, or retail sellers in stores. We had to really increase our investment and focus. As the buyer comes in more educated, we need the person in the store more educated and more engaged. So we invested in really building brand advocates, and we want the experience in the store to be great for the customer. And so we focused a lot. I'll give an example. We're just introducing and ramping a new brand, our Intel Evo brand. One of the areas that we've done is created experience zones in stores where you can put like products and really help a consumer get that look and feel. The final thing that we've invested in, which I think is truly important, I know we'll talk about it today throughout this panel, is we invested in a data and analytics in our team. Today, we've got billings data from Intel, we get retailer data, we get third-party data. So we have probably more data we knew what to do with. What we've really invested is turning this data into insights, not only to help form our business, but to be able to work with our partners and help our partners make better decisions and be ahead of the game.
Thank you very much, Greg. So that's a wonderful comment. Taking a chance, actually, and sorry that I switch in English because I see that Greg probably will hear direct the sound from this session. Taking the chance, actually, I was thinking about one more additional tiny question to you in the scope of overall discussion. I'm often asked by different press or journals to comment about break of supply for semiconductor technology, right? In particular, automotive technology suffers a lot, and we read about that probably in every second paper in the most famous journals. And this obvious break of supply, and you as a representative of this semiconductor industry, what is your opinion? So is it just pure supply-demand miss, so that demand is so high that supply just can't cope? Or is it not like optimal supply chain? And for example, AI technology will help to fix that in the global scale?
Yeah, again, I would give an opinion that's probably a little bit of everything. I think number one, just if you look across where technology is going today, technology and silicon is going in basically every device that we have. And so there's a huge uptick in that. I think the second thing is, again, I kind of gave you some numbers about what we had seen in PC demand. Again, when the pandemic happened, I think we had all anticipated a pretty large market crash. The opposite happened. I think if you look around industries, I think a lot of industries would have pretty similar points of view. I also think that when you look at a silicon lead time, it can be 6 to 12 months in terms of that. And then I think the third thing is, when you look at just technology and how it's manufactured, there's legacy manufacturing nodes, there's leading edge manufacturing nodes, and a lot of where the supply chain challenges are today are in some of the legacy manufacturing nodes that have been kind of end of life, where it's hard to get new equipment, new capabilities. So I think those are kind of the driving factors. I think, again, if I were to say at Intel, I think we have a very bold vision in terms of what we can do to provide silicon manufacturing, that we can be a manufacturing leader. And we actually see this as a pretty big growth opportunity for us as we look into the next decade. We think that the adoption of technology is a huge opportunity, not only for us, but for our entire ecosystem and partners.
Thank you very much. It seems like conditions for a perfect storm, right? How it's usually named in the market. Okay, thank you very much, Greg, for your comment. Sundar, I want to ask the question to you. The travel industry and your company, technology-led company, known for very great opportunities that you create for travel industry. So you have big alliances across the world that allows you to bring the new technology to quite old-fashioned business, let's say, which is named travel. And travel for the last year was probably even more impacted because of COVID. Right. Can you tell us a little bit how technology, and definitely it creates some delayed demand, right? So now when borders are slightly open, people start to do a lot of travel inside the country, a little bit across. So how technology helped to recover in the industry at the at this time?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so pleased to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to have Sabre come and present some of our thoughts and share with you what we are actually doing. And your questions are so apt, and I was struck by what Greg actually kind of led off to. By way of introduction, I'm Sundar Narasimhan, and I run a unit within Sabre called Sabre Labs that's actually responsible for innovation. And Sabre, as a company, which many of you may not have heard, actually sits at the center of the business of travel. We actually supply software for a lot of the airlines in the world, including Aeroflot, that you may have traveled on, and in American Airlines in the US, LATAM in Latin America, and APAC. So we see the impact that COVID has had globally. And you are right in that initially there was a lot of uncertainty. Travel did take a big dip, but post the vaccines being rolled out, we saw a pretty increase. There's a lot of pent-up demand. And to Greg's comment, it really pulled forward a lot of the demand that may have been put off, and where a lot of our partners, suppliers, really focused on is this era of personalized retailing, in that they were ultra focused on making money, which meant they needed to give what their consumers, the end travelers, needed, which is really those consumer grade experiences that we have now almost taken for granted. And you started off by saying, is it online versus offline in retail? Well, even though travel is a very old, and perhaps it's been around for a while, and Sabre is an old company that's been around for decades, it was one of the earliest actual verticals to automate. You could, in fact, it still fascinates me that I can put my bag in a chute in Boston and actually have it come out at the other side in Chennai, where my parents live. That kind of automation was put in place to make travel easy a long time ago. But now our suppliers are moving to personalized retailing. And that has meant investing in, exactly as Greg said, the kind of data, the kind of important observations about customer behavior that you can observe, and bringing together machine learning, artificial intelligence. And we have partnered with Google in our own technology transformation. And Google is a state-of-the-art company when it comes to AI. And most of our algorithms were changed in order to use customer data, but in a very smart way to give consumers what they really want at the end of the day. And in terms of technology, early on, there was a lot of focus on contactless check-in, contactless when you go to a hotel, so that you can not actually be affected by the virus. Then there was vaccine passports. Now we're working with industry organizations, not just our customers and partners, but industry organizations like IATA, who essentially have creating standards in order to make sure that travel, when it comes back, there's enormous pent-up demand, and not only happen in a safe and secure way, but essentially enable that personalized omni-channel retailing that our suppliers need in order to be essentially profitable businesses again. And that's what we are focused on. We get a lot of really positive feedback to some of the products we've announced as a result of taking in input from the marketplace, using AI and our partnership with Google to launch a couple of really innovative omni-channel retailing products in the marketplace. And we're well positioned, I think, as travel comes back. I know there's a lot of concern today about Delta and Omicron, but we see the pent-up demand. Travel to go to the places that people really love and meet their friends and family was never going to go away. It's sort of a human need. And Sabre is really positioning ourselves to provide that kind of advanced capability that most of our suppliers need who are responding to the market need.
Thank you very much, Sundar. So it's like an interesting approach that every aspect of the retail we are looking for personalized access to the and behavioral analytics of our customers in order to make a best offer for them instead of simple segmentation just to giving a standard products, and that's actually awesome. So тогда двигаясь дальше, хотелось бы.
So let's move on. And I would like to speak a little bit about another aspect of the technologies. Thank you, Nikolai, for joining us. You will be responsible for the whole Russian retailer. I'm sorry, but I think that it will be maybe quite okay for you. I write a very popular book, How to Create the Correct Retailer, that was written by Y manager of Cnossen. And I thought that if I finish my career with digital technologies, and then I will go to Cnossen. So it's a very good company. And the expectations of Cnossen from the point of view of technologies are almost the same. So it's very fast that you can adapt new experience. And we would like to ask a question about other technologies. When we speak at different forums about technologies, we always try to imagine something like a Terminator, like an artificial intelligence, where something is sorted, so then we understand that the technologies in general, especially in retailer and something that is connected with agricultural industry. So it's wider than the number and the price. So I would like to ask you a question. How does a company work not only with digital, in a digital format, but also with other parts of the technology where retailer can find this additional cost, something like startup, so some experiments and so on? Could you please comment on it? So hello everyone, I'm very glad to see you all, and it's very glad to listen to you. So I try to tell you how we work with all the innovations. And I will try to answer the question about the food tech. So we share the information. So the work with the clients, it's like the cashboard and then the scanning, and then the product where we can do the assembly and the delivery, and some dark stores. So then there is the third block connected with the solution or the eco tasks. So we are a retailer company, and first of all we speak about food tech innovations. How do we imagine it? What is it for us? So someone 365 days per year eats something, and then it's a lot of connection with the food. So it's done with the help of our food and the product. And there are a lot of places where someone also eats. It can be in the office, it can be at home, children eat at school. Someone wants to eat something healthy, somewhere is a sportsman, so they need to eat something for the sport activity. It depends on a person. So it depends. So our strategy depends on how we can cover these demands, satisfy these demands in all the formats of eating. So wherever this person is, this person can eat the products from Vkusville and enjoy these products, and still it will be healthy food. So it's important to understand how we work with it. So we had a very simple rule for us, the quality of innovations. We have not a separate division, but the whole company works for it. So we gave each employee an opportunity to work with food tech industry. What do I mean? It's a collection of startups, so some foreign startups and the Russian startups. So it's quite a big set of companies, partners companies who give some technological solutions. We cooperate with venture foundations. So we invite experts to us. And it's very important how we cooperate with external people. We have a platform where we invite all entrepreneurs to create a project together with Vkusville and to have something of our own. That's why we have different projects with mini markets, for example, and other projects. And we had also vending machines, for example. So we try to pay as much attention as it's possible to the satisfaction of all demands of people in their food. A pandemic, of course, influenced this situation in COVID-19 when people stopped to go to the shops. They started to order food and order delivery. So, of course, we had to follow the industry and we had to prepare the ready set and to personalize the story. So our development as the company who covers the demands in food, we can see in the personalization. If before we said that it's quite enough to have a certain set of products, then now we have really to consider all the requirements. Okay, thank you, Nikolai. And with the creation of ecosystems and marketplaces where you can invite the representatives of business, so it's quite a common step in all industries. I saw it in Aeroflot and Russian railways. So they all quite actively then try to get this competitive benefit and to go forward in comparison with other players in the market. So, Nikolai, would you please continue a little bit? There is one thing that is very now famous. You can see a lot of very beautiful videos. I myself also tried to somehow play with it, and these are the technologies of virtual reality and added reality, big glasses, and I think that you also had something like this. So someone came to you and said, Greek yogurt, let's just sell it with the help of VR. Can you speak a little bit? So what do you think? These technologies, are they more, so it's not about the food retail, or is it possible to use it somehow? What is your vision? It's a good question, and this topic for me is a little bit painful, because we tried several times to become friends with it, with VR, but we didn't find any practical usage here, and we don't know how to do it useful. We had some prototypes, but we can see from our clients and from our complaints, we don't see any value in it. We just see that. So I need to go back to the venture industry, and now to develop a quality VR, it's necessary to have a lot of power, graph power. Then you will have a feeling that it's a reality. Of course, it's very important to look at the product and to understand what it looks like. And you need to see it like you have it in the hands. So for us, it's a different thing, and we cannot find any opportunity to use it.
Asking about AR, VR, and seeing how Sundar smiling, I guess that travel industry also most likely did a lot of experiments on that, especially in the scope of the pandemic. So if you are comfortable, can you comment a little bit? So what was your experience? Is it because at the first sight it seems like an absolute silver bullet for travel industry, right, in the COVID situation, and but most likely there is significantly different practical experience on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. We do track a lot of emerging technologies, and VR, AR is an important one, especially when it comes to travel. And most people think about it when we're partnered with companies like Google, which has YouTube, and now, as you probably know, in YouTube videos, there are these immersive experiences that you can get. And we track it not only because we think it'll affect travel behavior, because if you can wear on your headset and behave or experience what it might be to take an activity, then maybe people won't spend as much money, was the original thought. But there's another important trend going on, which is suppliers would like to show how a hotel experience might be. And even sellers, like airlines, you might say, want to show how a first class or an extra legroom seat might be. So these are experiences that are sort of short minutes, not really extensive games that give you a headache, which may be what Nicola was referencing, but gives you the ability to enhance the retailing experience. Imagine when you're shopping for an airline ticket, you could actually see how a longer legroom seat or that experience might be in terms of contactless, touchless, quick, check-in. So it's that kind of technology that we have seen. But the more important and perhaps interesting thing in the US and in other places has been called Web3. And this is an area where Web 1 was predominantly read-only websites where the publishers created them and you went to them. Web 2 was sort of where some internally, what you could call centralized platforms is where you went to, but the money was all made by perhaps one or two companies. And Web 3 is now an explosion where it's not just an AR or a video that you create and upload, but you actually get the consumers to participate in indicating what kinds of experiences they have had and what they find appealing. So to connect us back to retailing, I think that's where we think is very interesting to think about. And Sabre actually has what we call a media business, where we allow suppliers to create this kind of content and advertise in our platforms, so sellers can, view as well as, essentially articulate what kind of offers are available to buyers. And so when we think of ourselves as being at the center of travel, that's really what we mean. We are looking at both sides, the suppliers and what they want to do, what consumers need, and where technology is appropriate. Create those kinds of AR, VR, as well as personalized retailing experiences so we can create that friction-free, effortless commerce that, essentially we need in order to facilitate these pretty complicated. In fact, somebody actually said to me, think of where you are making this call from. You're in an aluminum tube flying at 33,000 feet, and yet you're complaining about the internet access. The fact that, travel exists and airlines are providing this kind of experience, and now it's going to be even more enhanced with this kind of user-generated AR, VR, Web3 capabilities that they get paid for, as opposed to some big corporation, I think is what truly excites us. And we're partnering with our technology partners as well as our supplier partners to make such a future possible.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Greg, I want to return to you. I have to ask this question because it's actually one of the topics in our abstract, and we hear a lot about ESG stuff, right? And when we talk about retail, or technology, it's quite clear where we talk about, where is S means social lies on, right? So it's like salaries, like better condition to work, and so on, so on. But what I personally struggle to understand, neither of us are oil companies, energy companies, or whatever other companies who do a significant CO2 footprint, right? But still, we have this question in our agenda, and we have this a part of our annual report. So, and again, a lot of people say that technology is a key to enhance that stuff. So what is your view, Greg, in terms of your company as a technology provider, again, in this dual role as technology provider, a retailer, retail player as well? So what is the real things retail can do in order to tackle this issue, tackle this problem, to make a real impact rather than just put some marketing message on the product that it's CO2, I don't know, neutral or reduce amount of emissions?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And again, this is one area I think if we look back over the history of Intel, we really want to take a leadership stance on social responsibility, corporate responsibility. And let me just give a little bit of example, kind of how Intel approaches it. And we can, I think it'll weave in a lot of the questions of what we do, not only for employees, but what we do in terms of just our own manufacturing and how we enable partners. We have an initiative at Intel, and this is if you go to our corporate governance websites, it's kind of our initiative, but we call it RISE. And what it stands for, it's an acronym. The R stands for responsible, and that's for employee safety, employee well-being, kind of just how we procure our products and how we work with our suppliers to bring products in. The I, it stands for inclusive, and that's for having inclusive and diverse hiring practices. We want the best people at Intel. We want the best teams. We want diverse points of view. The S is, I think, kind of the question you were asking, which is around sustainability. We manufacture a lot of product at Intel. This is our reducing our carbon footprint of our factories. It's using recycled materials. It's really being a good steward to the planet. How do we make sure that our manufacturing process is best in class? And the last is enabling. And I think this is the key one. Enabling is how do we enable our partners to have kind of a consistent vision? As we work on our products, we want our products to enable our partners and our customers to be able to scale to their aspirations. Now, we do this, and we actually publish publicly what we put, and we call it our RISE 2030 goals. So we've put goals for the next 10 years. It's pretty bold. We measure ourselves against it. We put it out publicly, and I think it's a really good forcing function. I think the second thing that employees at Intel, I think we take pride into this. We like to hold ourselves to a bar that's higher than maybe what the laws would be, or what we want to be a leader. We want to create a way for the industry to follow. We also, as employees, we get part of our bonus is how we achieve these goals together. And so that's where I think from us taking a stand, kind of being front foot and being kind of comprehensive, not only on the manufacturing side, but the human side of this too, I think it can really take a leadership spot for our employees and for the industry.
Actually, I expect to hear about a lot about AI, that it saves everything, the world and so on, but I'm glad that you haven't mentioned that in really hard terms. Okay. Но говоря об искусственном интеллекте.
Now speaking about the artificial intelligence.
Speaking about artificial intelligence, we know such an example as Amazon Go non-human contactless experience, well, you just need to go to a store, grab everything you need. There are no shop assistants, and then you just leave, etc. So no one who can actually slow down your consumers' experience. Well, as for Amazon Go, they did it, but they used different instruments, computer vision, artificial intelligence, and other technologies. So in general, we had quite an impressive picture with this concept. But I would like to address my question to Nikolai as a practicing retail representative of practicing retail. So what was done by Amazon from your point of view? Is it kind of an overkill, so to speak? The future belongs to that or not? Or is it more of an innovative branch of a final retail point, and it actually shows a super mega ideal result, but it's not going to be the case within the forthcoming 5 years? Thank you very much for the question. I think that we regard it as a marketing story, and we wanted to show how serious, for example, worked with innovations and how to have this beautiful picture in the future. But in fact, when we went to Amazon Go, personally, we really liked the idea. It could have its own niche in the future, but it's very difficult to scale up this story because when it comes to real cost needed for the installation of all the equipment in the store, there we have almost no payback. We are conducting a lot of different experiments, and we have in Shop-in-Shop similar formats. There we have special cameras, and there consumers can have make this checkout without even a shop assistant. And story is really nice, but it should be applied in the right way. As for small formats, yes, we're trying to open cafes in a similar format, and when there are not so many SKUs, probably it could be the case. And I think that within a period of 5 years, such stories or such cases could be and become even more profitable from the financial point of view. We have thought a lot about consumers where we could have a seamless approach or experience for consumers. So you just put products in your basket and then leave the store. And we have given it a try. There we also used a special scanning system, and I would say that it produced a very good results. We also used cell phones for scanning and for checkout. But what was the problem? The point is that a person holds a cell phone in one hand, this the basket, for example, for products in the other hand, and this hypothesis didn't work. What we realized right now, we are trying to use a special application, a special device in forms of a laptop or not, and when a person passes by such the point, then everything is scanned, and then person doesn't need to scan all the single item, every single SKU. So innovations already work, and they're quite successful. That is a great advantage for buyers because they do not have spent too much time. So as far as I understood, in general, story is really nice, case is really nice. So I'm trying to imagine this consumer's experience. I've never used Amazon Go, but it's very interesting from the computing capacity and many other things. Greg also talked about that. We also need to think of a period of 5-7 years. But we'll see what the future holds for us. And probably we should have more practical things in our life. So just to summarize our discussion, I would like to ask the following question. So very often, we know that such a thing as a business manager, the survival of I don't remember how to say that. When we talk about technologies, we also say, for example, they succeeded, etc. But very often, if we actually think about what is happening behind the scene, there are a lot of failures. And maybe in the neighboring hall, they will criticize me. But just a couple of years ago, we heard about the use of blockchain in retail for example, different things. And so we can find out a lot of information regarding the products, regarding the raw materials, and also animals that are used for food production. Also, it was the case there with Carrefour. So 2 or 3 years passed, and after this wave of hype and this talks about this, we can hardly hear about that. And when I think about that, yes, probably there was a success, but not so much. And in the concept of this discussion, where we succeed and where we fail, I would like to ask every speaker to give some kind of a practical advice, some prediction for a period of 2 or 3 years, 5 years maximum, because, well, by 2050, I think that we'll no longer have to work. So let's just stay practical, responsible. Just 2-3 technologies or some directions you consider to be really perspective or something that could really boost the retail segment. So during the forthcoming 2 or 3 years, what's going to make a real difference? And so we will see it apparently in 5 years down the road. So could you please comment on that? So Greg, can we start with you?
Yeah, let me, I can just real quick. I think when I look 3 to 5 years out, just kind of maybe 3 major trends. I think we've kind of hit them today, but just number one is around supply chain. How do you fulfill the orders? Do you ship to your customers? Is it buy online, pick up in store? The fulfillment, we talked about the Amazon Go model. I think that's a really big component. Also, just being able to plan what you offer to your consumers in this environment of supply chain difficulties is ultra important. I think the second one, and again, it kind of is a theme that I know Sundar probably faces too, is around how do we manage channel conflict. A lot of our buyers and consumers are going to go to websites. Intel, for example, we don't sell directly to consumers. We sell through partners, but they still will come to our website. So how do we inform a consumer? How do we have a direct relationship with consumers? How do we enable our partners? A lot of our partners and retailers sell the same product in different channels. How do they complement each other? There's a lot of just innovation in terms of marketing, collateral, marketing, syndication, in terms of how to communicate, yet make it complementary, not competing from that, and make it really a better experience for the end user. And then I think the third thing, again, I've hit it a couple of times, is just data and analytics. And Tom, when you mentioned it, a silicon lead time can be 6 to 12 months. It may be 2 months from a sale till we have data. The faster that we can get point of sale data to us can inform our factory decisions, utilizing some AI technology. Like this is where we would work with partners and with startups to really be more predictive on what we're seeing real time, to be able to form future forecasts and future decisions. Taking this data, turning it into insights, helping our customers and our partners be able to accelerate business decisions. Those are probably the 3 largest trends that I think we're looking at and investing in.
Sundar, can you hear us? Well,
yes. Yeah.
What is your view on 2-3 years from technology perspective? What will be the hottest thing for implementation in retail?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'd kind of pick up where Greg kind of mentioned, and we see the same sort of behavior similar to Intel. You know, we are also we sit in the middle of suppliers and consumers. And while, you know, I think one of the points you mentioned very early on that we didn't really touch upon, but I think is going to be an important trend to monitor, is climate change, right? And how consumers are wanting to know, is the product that I'm consuming, was that made in a sustainable way? And am I going to rate some suppliers over others? I'm going to purchase from one versus another based on that. And so we've enabled, you know, if you think about different airlines, how they're approaching this and how consumers can actually see that information and make judicious choices is sort of the early stages. But then there are sort of more far out sort of changes happening too. We've all heard about electric vehicles and battery technology and how that's going to change the way. But similar changes are happening in air and, more importantly, in cloud technology. Part of our digital transformation is to move a lot of our compute infrastructure into, for example, the Google Cloud, where it runs these, what I would call, pretty interesting algorithms to essentially present value to our partners and to end consumers, but in a much more cost-efficient way. So when we talk to partners, that's sort of what I would call the second unlock. The third unlock, which I think is actually a more interesting one, is that while there is a trend towards privacy and data, and I know in your European Union as well as Russia, there are movements afoot as to where data resides, suppliers also have realized that if they put their data in conjunction with other data that their partners can provide, like ourselves, the smartness of the recommendations that the engines, the artificial intelligence technologies can make becomes that much better. So what I find is this interesting trade-off between wanting to keep information models, your competitive differentiating features private, but also recognize that by control sharing in a marketplace, you can take advantage of other data that can actually enhance your results. Wouldn't your price be much better if you knew what the competitor website or competitor, hotelier was actually charging at that point in time? So it's that kind of innovation where it is a push-pull tension, open-closed, interesting relaxation of relationship that's really going to power the next generation of what we call personalized retailing, taking advantage of the platform innovations that companies like Intel and other hardware manufacturers are very focused on creating AI chips that can run on these petabytes of data. What used to take essentially months, if not quarters, to develop a model, deploy it. I had to have PhDs in white lab coats to calibrate and fine-tune those models. Nowadays are running real time. Every shop to shop, every book to book, what is optimal is being created, thought of, and generated and retailed in an omni-channel way. And I think that's the trend in terms of not only taking advantage of these technologies and trends, but also doing so in a way that is responsive to consumer needs, to be transparent about climate change and sustainability, that I think will really serve our partners well in the future.
Yes, and I think a brave new world you described. Okay, Nikolai, буквально давайте.
Nikolai, we are actually running out of time. Nikolai, 2-3 technologies you would like to highlight, something that we should really look at in more detail. Well, there is quite a big number of different services. Last mile delivery. You know that there one of the presentation was about intensive use of robots there, and they said last mile we can now use more technologies. And by the way, speaking about environmental issues, of course we will be talking about packaging, about sustainable development in general, about all those things. For example, yes, use for packaging, for production, etc. Yes, we also should meet the needs of our consumers. So, dear colleagues, our session is over. I would like to thank our participants. I would like to thank all those who were listening, our speakers online and offline as well. Yes, technologies, they shape a lot our competitiveness, our reality, whether we talk about food retail, non-food retail, production, industrial sectors. So this has an all-pervasive presence and influence, but it's not just the case in one region or one country. This is a global trend. It's everywhere, and that is what our speakers actually confirmed once again. Thank you very much, and wish you a productive work at this conference, and see you soon. See you.